I heard about this man who was standing on the scale in the bathroom, right? And he's sucking in his big belly. His wife is looking and said, come on, it doesn't help. And he said, what are you talking about? Of course it helps. Now I can see the numbers. I want to talk to you today about imperfect peace. Some people decided to laugh. Imperfect peace. So, as I mentioned before, we just started this cycle within the Jewish calendar that is called the 3 weeks. And it started with the 17th of Tammuz, and it goes all the way until Tisha B'Av. What is exactly that we are remembering during the 3 weeks? Because again, as I mentioned, it's a semi-mourning period, right? That there are certain restrictions that some people observe. Depends on the tradition. Some people don't get married during the 3 weeks. Some people don't get married only the last 9 days of the 3 weeks. Some people don't shave. There are different traditions, okay? To understand the 3 weeks, we have to go all the way back to the year 586 BC. What happened? King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, sieged Jerusalem. Okay? The Jewish army, the Israel army, was very successful to keep Babylonians outside Jerusalem. But what happened is on the 17th day of the Hebrew month of Tammuz, the Babylonians successfully breached the walls of Jerusalem. Starting on that day, the war was not just outside Jerusalem, now the war was inside Jerusalem as well. Fast forward 3 weeks. 3 weeks after the first breach, the temple is destroyed. And that is Tisha B'Av. It's a day of fast. It's one of the saddest days of the Jewish calendar. Remember that in the Jewish history, Tisha B'Av, the destruction of the temple, it wasn't just the destruction of the temple, it was a mass killing and a mass deportation of people all the way to Babylonia. So we lost not only the temple, but the land of Israel. Okay? So, in Jewish history, the destruction of the temple was the biggest tragedy that we have before the Holocaust. So for us to put it into perspective, how terrible it was. Okay? So, what happened is, after the temple was destroyed, so that's why we have the 3 weeks, okay? So what happened is, after the temple was destroyed, what we also have to understand, is that there was a big discussion within Judaism of what now? How is Judaism going to look now that the temple was destroyed? Go to the Torah. The Torah says that the only way we have to worship God is through sacrifices, specifically the temple. The Torah will say multiple times, "Bamakom asher yivchar Adonai." You can only sacrifice in the place that God will decide. And that was the temple of Jerusalem. So once the temple was destroyed, on paper, Judaism was over. There was no plan B, at least not as presented in the Torah. Okay? So we still have the Torah, we still have the teachings, we still have to fulfill commandments, but there was one thing that I was missing now, and it was the temple. For many people, that missing thing, the fact that the temple was not there anymore, meant the end of Judaism. And that was one opinion, by the way. That was one opinion back then. But then the majority opinion, the opinion of the rabbis, was no. Judaism is still great, even without the temple, and we have other ways to connect with God. We may not have the temple, but we can still pray. We don't have the sacrifices. We can give tzedakah to atone for our sins. We can make peace with our friends. We can do teshuvah. We have other ways. They didn't get stuck in the thing that they didn't have, and they created a new form of Judaism based on everything that we did have. And that was the time, by the way, that Torah took the number one priority for Jewish people. It's hard to believe that before the destruction of the temple, Torah was number 2. Number 1 was the temple. But now, Torah was number 1. That had many benefits. because the temple was in Jerusalem. Torah, you can take it with you wherever you go. So kudos to the rabbis that they didn't get discouraged for what they didn't have, and they were able to create a beautiful thing, which is called the rabbinic Judaism. That is a kind of Judaism that we practice based on what we did have. Because they understood something that is, I believe, is important for all of us to understand. That the world is not perfect, life is not perfect, and there will be always something missing in your life. So thanks to this bold decision from the rabbis to create a new form of Judaism, they were able to bring back internal peace, joy, and optimism. And I said this is very important for us to understand, because it's human nature that doesn't matter if you go through a big tragedy or a little thing, we get stuck on that thing that we don't have. Sometimes we go out, we have a great vacation, 2 weeks somewhere exotic and fantastic. Then we come back, the flight was delayed. Now we are miserable for the rest of the year. You've been there. You go somewhere, it's fantastic. A bag was missing. Now you cannot enjoy your holidays. Right? Why? Because it's human nature. We get stuck with the thing that we don't have, and we lose our peace. We lose an internal peace. And it's very important to understand that life never is going to be perfect. And the quicker we understand it, the happier we are going to be. And I wanted to say that in this week's Parsha, there is one thing that is amazing. Pinchas. Again, I'm not going to judge his character, okay? That might be for a different sermon. But Pinchas received from God a Brit Shalom, a covenant of peace, the only gift of peace that came from heaven. And most of the time, and I was very disappointed when I didn't see it in the Torah, but I won't lose my peace from it, that sometimes the word shalom and Brit Shalom, the vav, the little o, the little vav, there is one line, is broken in the middle. There is like a little bit of ink missing. And why is that? I believe that the message from there is that to find shalom, you have to learn to deal with imperfection. You can't wait until everything is perfect before you regain your peace. You have to learn that in order to experience peace, you have to accept an imperfect world, an imperfect life. And you see, I like to call it that little ink that is missing there, the missing piece. And you can spell peace the way you want. You can spell peace as P-I-E-C-E, the missing piece, or also P-E-A-C-E, the missing piece. Because if we are expecting that everything is going to be perfect, it's going to be always a missing piece and a missing piece. Now, it's interesting that that Brit Shalom was given to Pinchas. And why was that given to Pinchas? Because he was a person who couldn't tolerate an imperfect society. When he saw something that he didn't like, he went and killed it. And God taught him and taught us that that's not the solution. Because, hey, this is not something that happened, 3,000 years ago with Pinchas. Sometimes we see it across the border, that somebody doesn't like something and they go around killing people because they didn't like the way it is. That's not the Jewish way. The Jewish way is to train ourselves from early age to deal with imperfection. And you see, the other one, to me, that it was a perfect example of somebody who is all the opposite from the Jewish ideal, was the bad guy from the story of Purim, Haman. You can say boo. Yeah. What happened with him? If you read the book of Esther, he had everything you can imagine. Okay? Had a beautiful family. He had a wonderful position in society. He was second in command of the Persian Empire. Everybody was bowing down to him. He had everything, but he was miserable. Why? Because one person wouldn't bow down to him. And he wouldn't be able to move past that. For him, the only way to find peace and joy was when everything will go his way. And one little thing didn't go his way, and he lost his peace. And we all know how that ended. So this parsha is a beautiful reminder of life, and it's a beautiful reminder of the Jewish way to go through life. If you're going through life understanding or expecting that everything has to be perfect before you can be happy, didn't go well. It's not going to be well. But if you understand that shalom, peace, has a broken vav, has always a missing piece, then, and only then, you will be able to find internal peace in an imperfect world. Shabbat shalom.